Well, what is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. It's been some time. I'm a few minutes early, or I guess I'm 1 minute early. And so I apologize for the lack of shows over these last, I don't know, I guess it's been 2 or 3 months. As many of you know, I had a baby. It's been hectic, chaos. And thanks for all you guys who donated for Mr. Louie. He's doing better and better. He's going to be home with us so soon. So, thanks so much for all of the prayers and support. It was so kind. And like I said, he's doing so well. He's getting so close to home. And so we're so excited. We can't wait. Can't wait we have such a nice chair to hold him in. It'll be so much better than the lame hospital chair that we've had to sit in. So we're so excited. But yeah, he's doing better and better. So it's been so great. It was, very, very hectic, very hectic. Oh, thanks. We were our first Thank you, dude. Thanks for coming and stopping by. Hey, Skeleton, dude. I'm so excited to see all of my buddies, guys. Thank you. I was worried when I was doing the show. I was like, I don't even know if anyone's gonna show up. It's been so long. But thanks, guys. Thanks for already having a few people here. And as always, current events, I don't really care too much, but obviously the war in the Middle East, I'll be interested to see what happens. Oh, thanks, Gal. Thanks, Gal. We'll see. I already whisper, I've already been whispering to him. He had to, because the hospital has like little shirts for him, outfits, and there are a lot of them with dinosaurs on them. So I always let him know. I say, dinosaurs aren't real, buddy. Just so you know, they're not real. Skeptic, dude, what's going on? Nice to see you, dude. Nice to see you. But yeah, so life's been good, and slowly, once he gets back home, I'll be better at. I've been working on this book and another book. Arthur, I bet Skeptic knows it. Arthur Colister. It's about Khazaria, which is very fitting for the war in the Middle East. But basically, it's about how it's an awesome book. It'll be super hard to do a show on because the way the author wrote it, he uses like primary sources and then like his words. But basically, it talks about how the primarily the Jewish population of today is from this land called Khazaria, which has existed from about 600 and 900 AD in modern day, like Georgia, Turkey, Russia, Ukraine, and basically how they converted to Judaism. And the Spanish Jews at the time, they like heard about this land, and they were very powerful, super powerful group. And basically, that's where all 80%, I think, of the Jewish population is Ashkenazi. And that is where their real ties stem from. They do not stem from modern day Palestine. They are not Semitic. They're Khazarians. They're from, Russian area. That's why there are so many Jewish people in Germany, Poland, Russia, is because they all come from Khazar. So it's a super interesting book that's really fitting. I think Oddman told me the author got assassinated or something like that. But I'm working on those notes next, so it's not tonight's show. But anyway, so tonight's show, though, is about Crowley. And so the book's title is Crowley The Great Beast 666, something like that. And, thank you. Thanks for digging the setup, dude. I'm going to wear this Napoleon hat on when the Napoleon movie comes out. My wife I also have a Napoleon hoodie. Oh, you read it, Scal. It's good, right? But I have a Napoleon hoodie of his like Napoleon outfit. So I'm going to wear that and my Napoleon hat to the show. So I got to find my dad will either go with me or maybe my father-in-law, whoever's not embarrassed for me to wear that outfit. But yeah, so Crowley's this book that I'm reading. I ask this question to everybody who's more knowledgeable than me. That's a lot of people. And I always say, what is the ties between occultism and spies? And this book, not that it gives me the answer to it, but I didn't know much about Crowley. Obviously, like he's a kind of a disgusting guy, which definitely is solidified in this book. But it helps me. It gets me one step closer to understanding that question of what is the link between spycraft and the occult. And so Crowley, he was, everyone knows who Crowley is that's in our world or in our conspiracy circle. His name originally, Edward Alexander Crowley. He was, the great beast, the wickedest man in the world. He was born October 12th, 1875, near Stratford-on-Avon. He was the only surviving offspring of his two parents. And also Stratford-on-Avon is where allegedly Shakespeare was born, or maybe where he lived. But regardless, the Crowleys, he was born in a middle-class Victorian family. His dad was a well-diversified businessman. And this I found super interesting. His dad, So they originally were Quakers. So, the Quakers, the William Penn, all that stuff, very nonconformist. But eventually his dad would break away, his family would break away from the Quakers, and they would join this new evangelical sect called the Plymouth Brethren. And it almost, well, I'll just continue going. But so the Quakers, the people that would literally do the shimmy shimmy, who were very odd. The Plymouth Brethren thought that the Quakers were a little fanatical. So the Plymouth Brethren, they anticipated the imminent end of the world with glee. They rejected all forms of Christianity as hellbound. Basically, they were a cult. And I found that odd, right? Like already Crowley is raised in a cult and he is going to form his own cult, as we'll find out pretty soon. So you can see where Crowley got his first taste of this like mindsets of cult mindsets, behaviors, how his cult operates, how you manage the cults, how you manage people. And so did this help Crowley find his like crazy people, his crazy followers, the crazy women, the crazy guys that he would sodomize that were like very high up in the military? Or did it facilitate his ability to make women crazy, to make the men allow him to sodomize them? I guess it's like the chicken or the egg type of scenario. But regardless, Crowley's love life and friend life was anything but easy. So he inherited none of his father's like financial acumen, but he had a large inheritance, spent it lavishly. He was always partying. He blew pretty much through all that cash, but yet somehow Crowley always had money that just magically fell in his lap. Was it because he worshiped the devil? Was it because he was sodomizing men, and doing sex magic? Or was it a much more logical reason that maybe the British government was giving Crowley lots of money? And we will find that out pretty soon, because he liked to spend a lot of his money on drugs and whores. So he would credit his benevolence of the demons that he communicated with. That's how he got all of his cash. Damn, Skeptic says Quakers, you still are in Hawaii. Dude, who knew the Quakers even existed? Wow. I'm going to have to look up, Skeptic, after the show, like what the population size of the Quakers is. I can't imagine it's large, but yeah. So Crowley's excuse when people would say like, how do you have all this cash? He would say, oh, demons brought it to him. But again, we'll find maybe it was some of that, but probably much more logical answer is that the British government would pay him for all of his work. But anyway, so the apple never falls far from the tree. Just like how his father would get followers to try to quote unquote save their souls, Crowley would convert many lost people to his faith. And this just kind of like today, the people that gravitate towards this kind of stuff, the low level people, the regular folks of the dark arts and magic, they're usually kind of just like lost souls, right? They're lost souls for the most part. But Crowley loved power, loved degeneracy, and spycraft gave him the ability to do literally whatever immoral activities he wanted imaginable, pretty much with the full protection of the English government. And this was under the guise of saving and protecting the crown. And Crowley would say the goal of magic was to affect changes in the physical world in accordance with the will to manipulate behavior and natural forces without observable action. And so but anyway, towards the end of his life, Crowley would compare the secret chiefs of Britain's espionage behind the scenes to his masters of his Great White Lodge. Oh, what's going on, Derek? Kinky stuff and blackmail are intel, stock, and trade. Exactly, dude. And again, like I know I always ask this question. Skeptics probably heard me ask this question like 8 million times to every guest I have. But like and I haven't heard like an awesome answer yet of why intelligence and the occult world tie together so well. But again, this book, it gets me like one step closer to that answer. But early in Crowley's life, he had a particular sense of duty for England. And while attending Malvern College, which was his boarding school in 1891, he joined the cadet corps of the 1st Worcester Royal Artillery Volunteers, which required him to take an oath loyal to the crown. And so I found that interesting that, again, this guy who you would think would not be a loyal subject to the crown, but he made a promise, a vow that he took seriously. And he talks about this in his books, how he took his oath very seriously. And he would later remove this from his autobiography. Yes, Derek, we're going to get into Crowley worked with military. He was military intelligence. So towards the end of his life, he would remove this from his memoirs, but he wrote in his memoirs that he always felt himself bounded by that oath that he to England, adding that, and his quote was, "Every time I perform an act of support of my original oath, I strengthen the link to England." So does this sound like what it sounds like to me is just like John Dee and Edward Kelly. It sounds like to me, just all these spies that have ties to the occult world, right? Like they have a secret link to our CIA, to high echelons of government, and Crowley was no different. And so this is maybe the key in his future success in Secret Service. So Crowley, he would turn into what they would call at the time a romantic Jacobite, which basically meant that he was part of this partisan group of the Stuart dynasty who had lost the throne of England and Scotland almost 2 centuries before. And he was part of this group that was trying to restore the Stuart dynasty, the Stuart monarchy, to the throne of England, because the Stuarts, they lost they lost their crown when William of Orange of Denmark, who was funded by primarily Jewish bankers, to overthrow his father-in-law. Why did he do that? Well, what he did when William of Orange overthrew his father-in-law, he instituted the Bank of England, which was the beginning of the end of not being enslaved, debt slavery. Bank of England controls the world today financially. They helped start the Federal Reserve. And so I found that odd that Crowley was, thank you, dude. Thank you. And Skell, I don't know that if she was a Stuart or not. I don't know. But I just found that interesting that Crowley, you wouldn't associate Crowley with being a monarchist, right? Like I wouldn't, at least. You would think he'd be like a communist. But no, he was part of a group that was trying to restore the crown to the Stuart dynasty. So I found that odd. And it's probably like one of the few things that Crowley and I would agree on, monarchy. I'm like a low-key monarchist. So, but yeah, I found that so odd. And so Crowley also had a passion in climbing and hiking. Not something, again, that I would associate this guy that would be sodomizing men and women and doing sex magic with, but he had a passion for climbing and hiking. He would climb, we'll get into it, K2, Nepal. But anyway, so his mother substituted eventually was his aunt, and she was active in this group called the Skeptic says Diana was related to Churchill, and Churchill is going to have ties with Crowley too soon, which we're going to get to literally right now. But so his aunt, she was active in this group called the Primrose League, and this league was named for Disraeli, who was a British Prime Minister. Skeptic, correct me if I'm wrong. I think he was he was in. I think he's important in getting Israel their homeland back. Skeptic, again, correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think so, but yeah. So the league was named for Disraeli's favorite flower, the primrose, and which was affiliated then with the dominant Conservative Party, which Lord Churchill, father of Winston Churchill, helped found. So again, Crowley's aunt, member of the Primrose League, started by Winston Churchill's father. See, it's just time. Nothing has changed over time. These powerful people, just like Bohemian Grove, just like all these these people that have controlled banking, media, politics, they have been involved in magic, the occult, spycraft. They are all interlinked since forever. And so the Crowley's time is no different. And the Primrose League would be Crowley's first foray into clandestine works, right? So it was modeled after the Orange Order, which was a secret fraternal order of hardcore Irish Protestantism. So basically it acted like a secret society within the Conservative Party, which would spy on enemies of Toryism, a society within a society, which we're just going to see over and over and over and over again. So it's hard to believe that he had associations with both the far left and the far right. And he would maintain, though, that he was always a Tory at heart. So again, you would not think that Crowley would be this far right monarchist, but he was. But he had tons of associations. He joined groups of far left, anarchist groups, communist groups, because he was a spy. And that is exactly what he did. And so he was a spy, which allowed him to practice magic kind of unbothered, right? He wasn't going to be arrested and bothered because he had so much information that they used him because he was good, because he would do whatever you needed him to do, because what was important to him was banging dudes on the side and doing magic. So this is why he's used to infiltrate Jacobitism, Celtic revivalism, and the Primrose League. Crowley would become close with Robert Cecil, who was the Grand Master of the League, and he was British Prime Minister from 1885 to 1902. So again, we're seeing, hey, Raven, mom and babe are doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. She's doing great. She's doing so great. Yeah. So again, it's just so funny that we just are seeing this, just the occult and the ties to the top of politics. And he was a voracious reader. He loved math, chemistry, chess, poetry, mountain climbing. He would climb the Swiss Alps. Like, just again, things that you wouldn't associate with. I associate Crowley with being like this pimply, oily faced dork. And not that saying he's not those things, but the fact that he was like this avid, he was athletic. He was like this athletic guy that liked to climb these very difficult climbs and things like that. I found that odd. So, but yeah, he had like these admirable qualities. He pushed himself. He was athletic, et cetera, et cetera. And so he would keep his distance from his students, just like how he would prefer to climb by himself. One thing, though, he did not mind doing by himself one thing he did not like doing by himself was sex. And sex in its many, many varieties: women, men, old women. He liked to cross-dress. Reminded me of how Ben Franklin was in the Hellfire Club, where they would bang nuns and John's wife swapping with like Edward Hubbard and John Kelly and Edward Kelly, L. Ron Hubbard. Did I call him Edward Hubbard? L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons. Just sexual degeneracy it just goes hand in hand with the occult. Epstein, all these people, even today, Nixon's quote about the Bohemian Grove, how they were, I can't say it on these platforms. The Bohemian Grove is the bundle of sticks thing I've ever seen. Again, so these powerful politicians, what's the enticing part of dressing up like a woman? How does that relate to the promotion of transgenderism today? I think it's all interrelated. But it's just funny that, again, for like 300 to 400, God, probably even goes back further. Even to Roman times, Commodus from, Gladiator, he would often cross-dress. He would, all these guys that were in these pagan religions loved just having sex with everybody. Little boys, little girls, old, anybody, wearing women's clothes, being sodomized themselves. It's just, is it a paganism thing? I don't know what it is. From a purely hedonistic perspective, Ben Franklin sounds like you throw a mean party. You're probably right, skeptic. Oh, and also even, Albert Pike, same thing. He big, like, just, animals crossed, again, the same exact stuff. Weimar Germany, same exact stuff. So it's just, and I still haven't got a great answer. I'm going to keep saying that, but there's just something so odd. Is it the lack of like Christian values? Is it just that you don't care? I don't know what it is. Like I'm not like the best Christian by any sense of the terms, but never once in my 33 or however old I am years of life, 32, almost 33 years of life, have I ever thought, it would be fun. I'm going to put on a dress and I'm going to get penetrated by a man. That sounds like an enjoyable time, you know? So there's just something weird that these power elites, these people that are the top echelons of our society, they love doing this. And I don't know, is it the chicken or the egg? Do you have to do this before you join? Is it something they make you do to join? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Um, Priest of Cybele, castrated males that dressed as females, worked as temple prostitutes, ancient Rome. They see enlightenment and perversion. I've in that skeptic, I'm reading or I'm listening to William Devine, maybe. I don't know. He was like an author from, he wrote this like, I mean, I'm not, is it like 200,000 pages series from like ancient Greece to like the Age of Reason. I've been listening to all his books, so I'm on the Rome one right now. And it's just fascinating to me, just like how these emperors were just into this, all the weirdest stuff, dude. Like they had these harems of 300 plus women, but that wasn't enough. They wanted they wanted children, they wanted men, they wanted everything. And it's just so weird, dude. It's so weird. But anyway, so during his many sexcapades, he would meet Gerald Kelly, who would become his brother-in-law eventually, and both would work in their Majesty's Secret Service. And in 1897, he broke tradition, and instead of scaling the Alps, he visited St. Petersburg, Russia. So now we know 1897, Sabbatai Zevi. That's a Jacob Frank. That's a great point scale. And if you guys don't know who the Sabbateans are, enlightenment through, what is it? Or redemption through sin. That's Robert. Come on. Who wrote the book? Somebody help me. 1666, redemption through sin. Robert, I'm blanking on the name, but the Sabbateans, they were this like group that they hid under many masks of many religions, but they both claimed to be the real messiahs. And they were into all this stuff. They believe that the more evil you could do, that's how you're going to force the real, how you're going to bring in the end of times. And so maybe that's why it all ties together. I don't know. But yeah. But so anyway, he would go to Russia in 1897. Russia at this time has been hit with so much infiltration from Britain, from maybe France too, but probably primarily Britain, who saw them as the greatest threat to overthrow the czars and to institute to have the Bolshevik Revolution. Yeah, I can't get the author right though, Skell. Robert, some with an S. I can't get it though. But anyway. So allegedly his purpose was to improve. So he went to Russia under the guise that he wanted to prove his Russian speaking so he could have a career in the diplomatic service, to be appointed into the most interesting court in Europe, the court of Tsar Nicholas II. Now, the courts of the Russian czars was always very interesting. They had these courts of like the darkest African Americans they could find. Lots of, I don't know what the PC term of little people is these days. Lots of those. Anybody that like looked different was in the Russian court. They loved them. They had tons of magicians. I think John Dee would head over to the court. I think he would even be kicked out of the court. But yeah. So eventually that was his lie of why he was visiting Russia. But really the reason why he was there was Britain was at the time was helping fund, arm, build up Japan to beat Russia or to start a war between Russia and Japan, which would happen in 1905, and help fund the Bolshevik Revolution. Obviously, Russia would lose that war to Japan. And Crowley's Russian trip was a test run. He was a nobody. He was a young college kid with a good covered story. And so this was his first test to see what he was truly made of. And now even some speculation, Crowley would meet with Rasputin on his trip in 1897. This is kind of conjecture at this point, but would that be really surprising? Rasputin was this total diplomatic service spies. Yep, exactly, dude. Exactly. But would that be surprising that the two of huge occultists and Rasputin would not meet with Crowley? They would become two of the world's biggest occultists. I find that pretty hard to believe that meeting didn't take place. Now, Crowley was an intelligent agent. So this is not to be confused with an intelligent officer. And I've probably used these words interchangeably and incorrectly on many shows. But for those of you who don't know, an intelligent officer is a formal career employee of the government. They have a salary, benefits, pensions. They might engage on hands-on spying, but their job is really more recruiting and managing the agents to do the dirty work. The agents, people like Crowley. And an officer may direct or run one or more agents who also may be referred to as intelligence assets. And so as opposed to an agent or an asset, they're compensated discreetly. They are not employees. They are not their identity of being assets are closely guarded secrets, even decades after their deaths. And, these are people's like Houdini, Sepher. Thank you, Robert Sepher. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, so intelligence assets or all of our hippies, Frank Zappa, Mama Cass, on and on and on, the Beatles, all these people, these are intelligence assets. They are not receiving payment from their governments that they're representing, the intelligence groups they're representing. They are just discreetly paid, maybe through getting jobs, maybe through getting fake promoted fame. Our celebrities are assets. You guys understand the difference. And they can be informants to deep cover operatives, agent provocateurs, all whatever they want them to be. And Crowley was always an agent. He was never an officer. His important roles were always infiltrator and provocateur. And origins of British Secret Service go at least back to Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, when Sir Francis Walsingham organized a team to fight against enemies, both foreign and domestic. And so this is where John Dee and Edward Kelly get their start. They are intelligence assets. And like I said, they became, the members of the Russian court. They're spies. They're confidential informants. Exactly. Thank you, Skeptic. That's a great way very much better way to describe it. So like John Dee, and I'm sure many of you know this, but he was the guy who inspired Ian Fleming to write James Bond as 007. That was the code name for James Bond. That was the code name for John Dee. And Crowley believed he was the reincarnation of Edward Kelly. I always love how all of these occultists are always a reincarnation of some other occultist that came before them. I just always find that funny. But so MI5 and MI6, they did not exist in the 1870s, but was organized by the War Office, ran out of embassies and consulates with attachés and other diplomats, eventually being ran out of Scotland Yard with its special branch, so a society within a society yet again. And so the special branch was headed up by this Irish-born guy, William Melville, a.k.a. M, a man who inspired Sherlock Holmes and his rival Inspector Lestrade. So again, a lot of these people would inspire authors that were probably involved in secret societies. I don't know who wrote Sherlock Holmes. I'm going to blank on that. But these got, just like Ian Fleming's inspiration, Sherlock Holmes was based on another guy that was a secret society, an occultist, on and on. And so anyway, this William Melville, he preferred dubious and unsavory characters like this Russian Jewish guy with a revolutionary/criminal background, Sigmund Rosenblum, and he would restyle himself as Sidney George Riley, the ace of spies, the nemesis of Irish Republicans, also known as Fenians, the anarchist of foreign spies, and this was the precursor to MI5. But Crowley's first mysterious calling occurred in Stockholm. What he was doing in Sweden is a mystery, but Arthur Conan Doyle. Thank you. Oh, you guys are so good. Arthur Conan Doyle. So I don't know anything about Arthur Conan Doyle, but again, I just found it interesting that I'm sure he got, that he found his inspiration from a real life character, a real life person. But so anyway, so Crowley, he goes to Stockholm, Sweden, and he gets a passport in 1896, which is weird because at the time, British subjects did not require a passport to visit Sweden or really anywhere, except one place that did require a passport was Russia. And Stockholm's was the main transport point to Russia that ruled Finland at the current time. So Crowley really went down the black magic rabbit hole when he started reading Arthur Waite. And Crowley would write to Waite for guidance, who suggested he look into this German mystic, Karl von Eckarhausen. And I'm going to butcher these names. But weird enough, the guy that Crowley got his first mentor, this Karl Eckarhausen, he would study at this Jesuit University of Ingolstadt. Now, maybe you guys have heard of this Jesuit University, Ingolstadt. There was a famous teacher there. Oh, who would that be? Oh, none other than Adam Weishaupt, who many of you may know was the creator of the Illuminati. So Crowley's mentor studied under Adam Weishaupt. So leading Crowley to believe that a hidden community of saints guided by Illuminati adepts. It's just, again, fascinating that these ties and links of these powerful people ruling education, ruling, I don't want to repeat myself. It's just amazing to me. And so the great beast would plunge deeper and deeper into the study of alchemy, tarot, magic, demonology. And while on a climbing expedition in Switzerland, he was pontificating about alchemy, and totally by chance, he's with a small group of people. He's probably screaming, oh, I love alchemy so much. And what would you know? He just happens to be within earshot. Again, this is totally by chance. I'm totally sure of a guy named Julian Baker, who was an accomplished alchemist who would say, oh, you like alchemy? You should come hang out with me. And he would take him under his wing. And Baker would let Crowley know, I'm actually a member of this group called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Totally by chance, everybody. Totally by chance. Sure, there was no pre-planning of that. And Crowley would become a member of the Golden Dawn when he returned to London. So this is how he got. So it is so incestuous. That's great. So yeah, so this is how Crowley became a member of the Golden Order. He was climbing in Switzerland, met a guy that was a member, and that's how he got into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So did Crowley by chance just run into Baker and speak loud enough, or did he knew Baker was there and wanted to get his attention? Obviously, you know where I lean on that. So when returning to London, Crowley would be introduced by Baker to a George Cecil Jones, who would introduce him to the order's leading figures, eventually meeting the patriarch of the Hermetic Order, Samuel Mathers. And now I tried to research if Samuel Mathers had any relation to Cotton Mathers, who was in charge of the Salem witch trials and stuff like that. I couldn't find anything for certain. I thought I found something that's possible. I don't know if any of you guys know if that's possible. And Skell asked, didn't Crowley claim to be head of the Illuminati at one point? I didn't get that far in the book yet, Skell, but I wouldn't put that past him in any way. Again, what are the odds that his first mentor was a leading figure of the Illuminati? So anyway, to get into the Hermetic Order, you had to undergo a background check. And in an interview, listen to this though, to get into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, so you had a background check. Hilarious. I find that awesome. And then the interview was a normal interview, but you also had to get an astral and psychic interview, which Crowley would pass with flying colors. How do you perform an astral psychic interview? I'm not sure on that. I would love to find out, but I guess he passed that as well. And he would join. So he would pass that in 1898, and he would join the Golden Dawn's Lodge in 1898. Now, joining this group, the Hermetic Order, was most likely an assignment from George Melville, the British, kind of head of the Secret Service at the time, or the first spy group, the guy that they based Sherlock Holmes off of. And so out of a population of 33 million in Britain, 200,000 members at the time were members of Freemasonry. And most of these 200,000 members were involved with the government and intelligence agencies. And I'm sure a lot were involved were just normal, regular folks, a society within a society. But I just, just again, I found that, again, interesting that the largest population of Freemasonry in Britain were members of high up government, military, et cetera, et cetera. So Freemasonry, though, was really just a normal group who would then depict those with the real interest in the occult. They would get them into the Scottish Rite, the Egyptian, the Martinist rites, and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dodge. Hermetic skeptic, hilarious. The skeptic says astral interview, probably more butt stuff. Funny. I bet you're right, dude. I bet you're right. I bet it was a spelling error in the book. That's funny. But yeah, so the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, they basically merged Theosophy, Rosicrucianism, and other more specialized occultic groups, combining, removing certain facets of each group. And the Golden Dawn renamed Theosophy's Mahatmas to the Secret Chiefs. And Crowley compared the Secret Chiefs and their mysterious to the heads of intelligence services, noting that both keep their followers in the dark. So Crowley even makes a comparison that I keep asking about, that the occult, they keep their followers in the dark, just like the head of intelligence services do. And so back at Cambridge, Crowley would become enamored with Jacobitism, or what they also called it, legitimatism, like this guy, Bertram Ashburnham, who was a bigwig. And reforming Jacobitism in 1886, it was a reforming society of the Order of the White Rose. Ashburnham also belonged to Golden Dawn, Knights of Malta, the Masonic Order of St. Thomas of Acre. So again, all these guys that are heads of so many powerful spy groups, military groups, politicians, they're all members of these occultic secret societies. And again, this is, in the late 1800s, and it goes back further than that. But it just reminds me of Bohemian Grove. It's like, it just doesn't, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And so he was also buddies, Ashburnham was also buddies with the head of the Hermetic Order, Samuel Mathers, who was the chosen mouthpiece of the Secret Chiefs. And Mathers, he lived in Paris, dabbling as and again, what do these people do? What do they always seem to be involved with besides the occult? They're always involved in various plots to overthrow governments. Oh, wow. Wow. The CIA, they're into the occult. They overthrow governments. Who was behind the French Revolution? Oh, wow. The Freemasons. What did they do? They overthrew the monarchy, the Bourbon monarchy, on and on. The Bolshevik Revolution. Many of them were occultists. What did they do? Overthrew the czars. So again, it's just more and more links between intelligence agencies and the occult. But Mathers, like I said, he was involved with plots to overthrow Spain, Portugal, Britain, and Crowley would meet, which is why Crowley would meet with him. And we're going to get to that in a second. And Crowley would meet Mathers in 1899. And the goal was Queen Victoria and her Saxe-Coburg line were German usurpers. So they wanted to overthrow Queen Victoria, and they wanted to institute King Ludwig III of Bavaria, who was a Golden Dawn member. And the Golden Dawn, they claimed they came from a German secret society. And the Nico-Jacobites also, which Crowley was a member of, favored a return to Catholicism, which I found odd as well. So, and some people despise the Catholic Church. I don't know. They have done so many evil things. I think they've been co-opted or were co-opted at some point and down the road. But so maybe that's why they wanted to reinstitute Catholicism in Britain. But it's just weird. It's just crazy. It's just crazy, dude. It's just, as skeptics so aptly put, it's incestuous. It's so weird, just so weird. So anyway, basically Crowley, though, is hanging out with active international conspirators with seditious intentions. And is he one of those conspirators with seditious intentions, or was he a British intelligence asset who was spying on these groups? He was spying on these groups. So they also dreamed of restoring a Bourbon monarchy, even in Spain, hoping to get Don Carlos II, the King of Spain, after the embarrassing defeat to America in the Spanish-American War in 1899. So in 1899, Ashburnham, He loaded his personal yacht with rifles purchased in Germany, sent it to Spain under the White Rose Group, where, what do you know? They almost got there, but it gets seized by French customs. Now, who ratted them out? Who blew the whistle that they were going? Yeah, that's right, Skepta. They wanted to overthrow one German dynasty with another. So who blew the whistle? Who blew the whistle on these groups that Crowley's affiliated with? That Spain is about to get a boatload of weapons from some occultic secret societies. Well, 30 years later, Crowley would say, I have much more to say about this story, but I cannot. So I think we can all kind of put together what that means, basically hinting that Crowley was a spy for the British government and ratted out his mentors, his buddies that had plans to overthrow the governments of that probably Britain helped instituted and helped propped up, or the Bank of England did at least. So this event also weirdly connects Crowley to taking on a Russian disguise as a Russian nobleman. Crowley loved his disguises, loved his fake passports, loved his fake names. And his fake Russian name was Count Vladimir Svarev. And Crowley said this is Crowley's excuse of why he created a fake Russian persona. It was a sociological experiment to hide his occult activities from his family. That's why he decided to start changing his name to Count Vladimir. And Crowley, as we will talk about, had a wide variety of disguises and aliases that he would go by in his lifetime, almost like what a spy might do or something, right? Or maybe he just loved tricking his family, right? And if you're just listening, I'm rolling my eyes because clearly that makes zero sense. But yeah, so Crowley would not fool any real Russian. He couldn't speak Russian. He didn't look Russian. He didn't act Russian. So why the disguise? Or did he put on this fake persona to sniff out any Russian spies that were hanging around the Golden Dawn? So Crowley suspiciously rose through the ranks through the order super quick. And many members despised him. They hated him for it. They were suspicious of him. They didn't understand. Why is this guy rising so fast when he's so new? He's not better than me. He's not a better occultist than I, but he just keeps getting promoted. And members of the Hermetic Order also really didn't like Crowley's weird penchant for weird sex activities with anyone, anything, male, female, old, young, what have you. And in 1899, senior members of the Hermetic Order in Britain refused to grant Crowley admission to the next degree. They said, no, you've gone too fast, too far, too quick. This is weird. No, we're not promoting you. So he runs to Paris to Mathers, which drives a wedge between the leader, Mathers, and the members of the London Order of the Golden Dawn. Again, almost like a agent provocateur would do, right? Oh, wow. Well, that's so weird how that happens. But Mathers sent Crowley back to London with a ceremonial dagger and a black mask to intimidate the other members, which would fail. But I guess this dagger had super special meaning, oh, it gives me superpowers or whatever. But this basically split the order. This destroyed the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, kind of just destroying groups. And again, this is what agent provocateurs do. They infiltrate groups. And I'm trying to think of prime examples, and I'm sure there's just so many that just have been infiltrated and ruined. Nationalistic groups, Tea Party. Good. Most recent example was the protests on Wall Street when we had the left, left protesting outside of Wall Street. We are the 99%. And you had the people on the right with the Tea Party. And what did they do? They sent agent provocateurs and what have you into these groups. And instead of focusing on how we're being in debt slavery, we're being, controlled by these bankers, stealing our money. I mean, everybody knows it's 2023. Good luck buying a goddamn house. Good luck doing anything on our measly salaries. In the last 3 years, we've lost 13% of our monetary value. What we should be protesting, but no, let's protest about transgenders in bathrooms, which is an important, a very important topic. Don't get me wrong, but does that really have an effect on your daily life? No, no. But it does have an effect on your daily life that our younger generations can't have families because they can never afford a house, because they can't even get a livable salary. They can't even get a job. They're so far in debt because they've been sold the lie of going to college and getting $80,000 degree, $80,000 for a meaningless degree to get a job that pays $60,000 a year. So this is what they do. So this was Crowley's job. He was an agent provocateur. So he split the Hermetic Order. And this was Crowley's goal. And then, just again, perfectly on cue or totally coincidentally, Mathers and Crowley would have a huge falling out using blackmail. Oh my God, we never heard of that before. Fraud, attempted magic murder, which I'd be interested to see what that looks like. I don't know if they're casting spells on each other like Harry Potter. And Crowley alleged that Mathers was a Jacobite conspiracy to overthrow the throne of England, which was probably true, but he's his buddy, right? He's his mentor, Ray Epps. That's great, Skel. January 6th. This is agent provocateurs is nothing new, but this is what Crowley was. He was a black magic spy for the British government. Crowley would eventually write this book called The Moon Child, which is basically about how Mathers was a German spy. And Mathers, he's a member of the Black Brotherhood. But so The Moon Child was a fictional book, but it's about Mathers. But the book was basically that Mathers was this German spy and a member of the Black Brotherhood who was enemies with the Hermetic Orders and Theosophies and whoever's the Great White Brotherhood, the good guys. So I just found that funny, but okay. So after and we'll finish. We got about like 15, 20 minutes here. So then we'll finish up. So hopefully you're enjoying. I just was fat. Like I heard this before about Crowley, but this was a really good book that it didn't get to, you hear so much like fanatical stuff that people laugh at us when we talk about these occultists. They think like, no, that's ridiculous. Oh my God. It sounds like, that's total. No, but this book was written very factually, So after the Golden Dawn meltdown, Crowley would somehow, totally by chance, be able to afford a beautiful house near Loch Ness. And I always like how his house was where the Loch Ness monster is. But he would perfect his magical operations and command of the occult arts. And in 1900, he would leave Britain for New York and travel around the world. When did he enter New York? Well, it's hard to tell, because there's no immigration records exist of him entering. What does that mean? Because they did keep immigration records. Shockingly in 1900, without computers, we were able to keep track of who came into across our borders. Unlike today, it's just too difficult. 3 million people enter. How many? I think, what was it? 3 million people. And I don't want to say a month, but, millions cross our border illegally each year. But in 1900, they figured out a way to do it. So that's reassuring. But so what this means is he came into New York under an alias. So why was he in New York? Why did he use an alias? Well, let's find out. So he would end up in Mexico in July. Why would Crowley go to Mexico? He said he went there to go climb some mountains. But on his way of climbing mountains, he would befriend this guy, Don Jesus de Medina. Don Jesus, again by chance, was a fellow occultist and a leading figure in Mexican Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Oh, wow. Imagine that. And he awarded Crowley the rights of the 33rd degree, and they would form their own secret society, the Lamp of the Invisible Light. And Crowley also, while in Mexico, enjoyed dabbling with peyote. And this drug at the time had already made its way to Mexico before 1900. And Crowley didn't just take drugs in Mexico. He was doing some other things there. What was he doing there? He was also working on one of his greatest obsessions, to make himself invisible, a lifelong obsession, which sounds ridiculous. And Crowley, like I said, he's a nut job. He claims, take this for what it's worth, Crowley claims he was never able to make himself invisible, but he was able to achieve a flicker of invisibility. And he said at one time a mob was after him and he was able to escape and slip out of their perception consciously and unconsciously. Regardless if this story is true or not, whether he actually was using magic or not, he did have the ability to remain undetected, which would be pretty useful for a magician or for a spy, right? And Britain's greatest now, why is he in Mexico again besides the occult? Well, Britain at the time, Mexico had some oil and Britain did not have oil. And oil was quickly replacing coal and Britain needed it to power their world's greatest fleet. And it was very scarce in Europe. So totally by chance, Crowley, while in Mexico, he runs into this British entrepreneur who would eventually end up taking the lion's share of Mexican oil, just as Crowley had left for San Francisco. So Crowley gets to Mexico. He's rubbing elbows with powerful people. He probably finds oil, finds out how to get to sell it, calls up a rich British guy, says, I got it. He takes over. Crowley leaves. Okay. Yes. And so he would he would left for San Francisco. And the British entrepreneur was a guy named Wheatman Pearson. And Pearson would be successful due to the backing of Mexico dictator Porfirio Diaz. Now, who is Porfirio Diaz? Again, totally just by chance, happened to be the Grand Master of the same Scottish Rite Masonry that Don Jesus had belonged to, Crowley's buddy that he met in Mexico. And Freemasonry had also dominated Mexican politics at the time. So again, it's just amazing how long that these secret societies have dominated world governments. I mean, I would never have guessed 1900s Mexico that Scottish Rite Freemasonry was controlling politics. It was. And so it just goes to show you again, like these wars that we've had for so many, world wars after world wars, it's the same groups. And we kind of all know that they're like false flag wars. They're created, they're contrived, they're ran by these secret societies. But even like a Mexican country that I would probably say at this time was a third world country, they're being ran by the same secret societies. So anyway, Crowley, though, he just had a funny way of being at places that would be very beneficial to the British Empire. Like in 1902, Crowley ends up in India. He was in India because he loved hiking again. And allegedly, he was there to climb the Himalayas, which was very close to the frontiers of Afghanistan, the Russian Empire, and Tibet, which was the last source of anxiety for the British because the Dalai Lama was working with the Russians. And the rumor was Russia was going to make Tibet a client state. So this led to the outright invasion in 1903 by the British. In the valleys by the Himalayas was rich with information, right? So was it Crowley's love of hiking, or was it because it was a hotspot of spies? Just like how Switzerland was in World War II, where Dulles' office was right across the street of German intelligence. They shared information with each other. It's the same thing. It's just the same story over and over and over again. And so in 1903, Crowley would head back to Britain. He would marry this lady, Rose Kelly, who was the older sister of a guy that we mentioned earlier, Cambridge friend of Gerald Kelly. And Gerald Kelly, I think he was the creator of the Primrose Group. So Rose, she would be the Beast's first Scarlet Woman, an embodied who L. Ron Hubbard and Parsons tried to create or tried to bring about. And the Scarlet Woman is the embodiment of the powerful feminine spirit of Babylon, this magical helpmate, if you will, the magician's assistant. And Rose would soon, totally by chance, spiral into literal and total insanity. And was this because she was already insane, or was it because Crowley doing magic on her made her insane? And so in 1904 in Cairo, she would play her most crucial part for the Great Beast to the Megatherion, serving as a medium for a spiritual entity, Iwas, in the channeling of Liber al-Level, Legis, or the Book of the Law. So Crowley wrote the Book of the Law. I'm sure you guys know this, while inside the Great Pyramid, channeling demons. And Crowley saw Iwas as his guardian angel. And Crowley saw himself as the prophet of the new age of Horus and its new religion, Thelema. A few months later, Rose would give birth to a girl named Nuit, Ma, Ahator, Hecate, Sappho, Jezebel, Lilith. Good luck. You know, we had to put Louis' name on a birth certificate. Good luck getting that name on a birth certificate. I don't think there's even enough lines to fit that name on a birth certificate. And good luck spelling that. I probably butchered every one of those names wrong. And he would take the insanely named girl, his insane girl or wife, girl Rose, he would take the insanely named daughter and Rose to India in 1905, then to China. You know, what I highly recommend after your wife gives birth to a child, take them traveling to third world countries, take them to India, take them to China. You know, I'm sure it's very easy. Who cares? I mean, you know, no worries there. Sure, that's not difficult to do in any way. And the timing was interesting because it was the culmination of the Japanese-Russian War, where the first time a European power would lose to an Asian country. And again, I mentioned earlier, Japan was financially, military supported by the British. That's why they were able to overthrow Russian. And this was they did this so they could eventually fully overthrow the Russian czars with the Bolshevik Revolution. And he would eventually, in China, end up in Yunnan province, which was a major opium producer at the time. And I'm sure Crowley was not there to gather information on quantity, quality, price, or distribution, considering that the area at the time was under French control, which were also competitors with the British. No, I'm sure maybe he just loved the area. He loved the atmosphere and the environment. And Crowley would notice how the area was flooded with French agents. Any tourist would notice that. When I went to St. Thomas on our honeymoon, we saw lots of people there. I noticed so many spies. I said, hey, they're a spy. That's CIA, right? You know, like, it's laughable, dude. Like, so again, I'm just saying this to prove or to highlight that Crowley was absolutely a British asset for the, you know, their Secret Service, whatever you want to call it at the time. And Crowley would disparage the Christian missionaries who were also spies for the British, but the Christian ministry, he would disparage them because they were not willing to do the same things that Crowley was willing to do, right? Crowley would steep to any level. As long as he could sodomize some people all along the way, he would do whatever was needed to get done. And the Christian missionaries, they were probably Christians and they were probably trying to convert people, but they were also reporting information back to the British about what was going on in these areas. I mean, think of all the Jesuit priests that, you know, basically opened up Japan, all over the world. They would send priests, Portuguese, the Spanish. That's what they did. They would send missionaries there, quote unquote missionaries, to convert and to gather demographic, anthropological information, on and on and on. And Crowley was the perfect spy. And he's a man traveling with a wife and a young child. Not many people are going to think, because it's an insane thing to do to travel with a 1-year-old baby to go to, like these crazy locations, that this person's a spy for the British government. He would eventually, though, send his wife not back to Britain, back to India, where he would return to Canada and New York, and then to England, making a pit stop to practice some nice sex magic in Shanghai with another member of the Golden Dawn. And Crowley was also utilized in using magic, tarot cards, to find a missing packet of 80,000 rubles, which was obviously meaning to go to was coming from a Russian bank going to Beijing. And England was suspicious of the Russians at the time, and the movement of such funds from Russia was, interesting to them. They were trying to figure out what's going on here. So when he arrived back in London in 1906, Crowley learned his daughter had died. He blamed Rose. She had another daughter. They would divorce in 1909. And at this point, Rose, his wife, had become just a schizophrenic to the, I mean, she was effing nuts, dude. Like she lost it. I mean, I think anyone would lose it if you're like channeling demons inside the Great Pyramid of Egypt, but she had lost it. She enters an asylum. She would eventually die. And he would also end ties with Gerald Kelly, who was a member of British intelligence, who was, I think Gerald Kelly was the one who introduced Rose to Crowley. And in 1907, Crowley would establish his own secret society, the AA, the Astrum Argentum, also known as the Silver Star or Adepts of Atlantis. But he even had an even more secret group that was basically his own group, which he called the Equinox. And some interesting members of that group were George Cecil Jones, who, what do you know, George Cecil Jones was friends with Stalin. Oh my gosh. And another guy who shared a mistress who also enjoyed the sodomizing of men from time to time, George Cecil Jones. Also joining Crowley's group were some more British intelligence officers and admirers of Hitler. And he also had high up Navy commanders who had also visits to Russia into undisclosed business. And the commander was very interested in sodomy, sex magic, and anthropology. So already, again, anthropology in recent, not as so much anymore with the internet and stuff like that, but 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, anthropology was huge in the spycraft world, being used by the CIA we just are sending these scientists to study what you guys believe in just because of science. But it was being used already, having close ties with intelligence sources. And Crowley would get other military people, one guy who would bang his cousin, and he was lured into sexual rituals that would eventually be used as blackmail against him. So just like Epstein kind of stuff. And this increased German interest in finding out more about this Crowley character. And we could continue and go on and on and on. But basically, Crowley had more British military intel officers joining his group in all areas of the British war machine. And it's just, again, like I'm going to say it again, military, press, all high upper echelons that control our society, they're in the occult, they're in these secret societies, they're banging, sodomizing, wife swapping, you name it, they're doing it. And again, is it the chicken and the egg? Is that what you do to get into the group? Is that what you do because you learn you enjoy it, because you're getting results from it? I lean towards I don't know. I think I brought this up before. I think that it's, an absolute great point, Scale. Travel, it would take weeks to get this. Wasn't easy travels. They weren't just flying there. But I really do believe that these people, these higher echelon people, maybe that's how they got into the group. They continue doing these things because they're getting results. And I've said this so many times, like when I say a prayer or whatever, I don't feel God saying yes. And the next day, here's a boatload of money. It takes a lot of work to go out in the desert and to be sodomized and to sacrifice a chicken or what have you. So clearly, and do they just love these rituals, or is it because they're getting results? And I think that's what it is. They are absolutely getting results from demons, from Satan, whatever you want to call it, from somebody, from something, someone. And we'll probably finish soon here because I'm almost hit an hour. Sorry, let me just see here. So, and then there was this poet, Victor Newberg. He was a German Jewish guy. He would meet Crowley in 1908. He would become Crowley's partner in homosexual magical workings, making frequent trips to North Africa, where they would use John Dee's Enochian magic and plenty of drugs to invoke the spirits of the abyss. Why North Africa, you may ask? Oh, well, North Africa at the time was controlled by the French. So did Crowley just believe North Africa was the prime spot for magic, or another cover for espionage? And Crowley would eventually find a new Scarlet Woman who was, what do you know, married up to a high up naval intelligence officer. Crowley would write a poem that was basically I don't know if Tim's still here, Skeptic's still here, but he would write this poem about basically about Winston Churchill and about his defection from the Tories to the Liberals. And then 14 years later, uh, how Churchill would rejoin the conservative fold. So was this a random poem, or was it because Churchill was a Freemason and a Druid? But Crowley would publish secret Rosicrucian rituals and said that he was commanded by the secret chiefs to do that. So was he doing that? Why was he doing this? Probably because he was outing other secret societies members and that he was going after, probably at the request of the British government. This reminds me of mafia people, Whitey Bulger. You give us the top dogs here. We'll let you keep doing what you're doing. Crowley wants to do all this black magic. He has no real ties to this group. He'll throw out, he infiltrated this group. He'll leak the information. They all get in trouble. He can continue doing what he's doing. Crowley even was so protected, he started holding public performances of his rites with audience, dosing his audiences with mescaline. And it was all fine. And people in the crowd would be males would be, it was all okay until male members of the audience were realizing they're being kissed by other people with mustaches, by other men. And Crowley was being libeled in the press. At one point, he had plenty of ammo to sue, but the Crown pressured him not to do this and just to take it on the chin, because then he would have too much information being released that he was a British asset. Russian intelligence officers would be caught in Britain by Churchill, who had ties to secret societies of Crowley's. And I'm sure this had nothing to do with Crowley's many trips to Russia. But Crowley would also gain connections to the OTO, who were very big in sex magic, in hopes of creating a magical child that would go forth and manifest the adepts of the magical physical world. And the OTO was also used by German intelligence, headed by a guy named Roos. And despite of Crowley being a rat, Roos recruited Crowley, and Crowley was made the OTO chief in Britain, earning the name Baphomet, the idol that was worshipped by the Knights Templar. And many powerful people were members of the OTO, combining teachings, many differing secret societies. One member of the OTO almost became a pope. So why would German intelligence want Crowley, a known British spy, to join the OTO to try? Why? Probably either to get him on their side. Was he a double agent? Was he encouraged by the British to join the German OTO? Probably. So in 1913, Crowley created this weird theatrical group that went to perform in, what do you know, Russia, of all places, just Russia. And Russia was very strict on foreign people entering. They all needed passports. After his theatrical group performed in Russia, the group disbanded. Oh, maybe they were unsuccessful, or because they were there for another reason. Just like how we've used Houdini and other celebrities to do the exact same thing, to spy on different locations. And, that's it. Crowley would then visit Switzerland, a place known for spies. And when returning to England, a new group would be created after visiting Switzerland called the Propaganda Board. A better name that I'm sure many of you have heard. It's better known as the Wellington House. And recruiting figures like, hey guys, here we go, Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote, Sherlock, H.G. Wells, another secret society member, and many others that would churn out propaganda, many who were secret admirers of Crowley. And the superiors of Wellington House did not particularly like Crowley, but they knew that he could do things that most people could not. And the Wellington's House biggest concern was German activities in the U.S. And I'm sure this is totally by chance. Crowley's next stop was an invitation to New York on business pretext. A man devoid of any business expertise, but on October 24th, he set sail. And we'll end the show there today. So we're like super close to being done. So let me just mark here that we finished here. So I'll do better. Things are going better and better with, my son and life. So I'm so glad we had thanks for all 15 of you guys coming to listen. That means so nice. I was worried no one would be here. So thanks for not forgetting about me. If you want to, you can go follow me at Kojak Podcast. And again, thanks for all the support and prayers and all those things. It meant so much. And, Skeptic, Raven, Skell, and many others. You guys rock. And I'll do a better job. Like I'm finally getting back into it. I'm reading again, taking my notes again. So I'm gonna end the show here. But I'm Jack Allen with Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. Leave a review, subscribe if you haven't, share the show, whatever. But thanks again, everybody. And it was nice seeing you all. And I hope you learned something. And we'll talk soon. All right, guys. Take care. Bye.